What's up, guys? Welcome back. Another episode of Quick Bricks NBA DFS podcast. It is Wednesday. We have 11 games on today's slate, so I'm not going to sit around and BS. I'm just going to go ahead and get right into it. This is episode number 14, I believe. No, 13. Let's go with lucky number 13. How about that? We need that for an 11-game slate today. Let's jump right in at Philadelphia at Orlando. Philadelphia coming in here as a -6 road favorite, 221 on the total. Let's just jump. I like Aaron Gordon at 7-7 again. He's played very, very well. He's had a double-double in his last 2 of 3, 43-plus fantasy points. I see that continuing. I know, Philadelphia shipped off Dario Saric and Cove. They'll get Butler back, but I still don't think that's going to affect much of Aaron Gordon. I know Muscala will probably get more minutes there, and he's actually on my list for Philadelphia. However, I believe I'm going to go Aaron Gordon. I think Fournier is more of a good cash play, but I'm going to have to list him because he's just been so consistent. 32 or more fantasy points in his last 6 of 7 games. 6.2K on him. Terrence Ross has been playing very, very well at 5K, 31.3 and 35 in his last two fantasy games. Fantasy point totals in his last 2 games. I've been on him quite a bit lately. His price has gone up a smidge, and now it's kind of bottomed back out of it. Been losing about $200 on it since his last game. But, again, he has been shooting very well. Philadelphia has tended to give decent games to shooting guards, and so not really sure how that will bode with Butler coming in. I guess we'll see, though, but that's really kind of about all that I'm looking at for Orlando. As far as Philadelphia, obviously you have to look at Embiid. His price is 10.5. He has not exceeded 11K yet. It seems like every time they drop his price, he has another monster game. Obviously, I think Embiid is a great play to build around tonight. He's put up 64 or more in his last 4 of 7, 52. I can't read what I wrote. Anyway, 64 or more fantasy points in 4 of his last 7. He's just been a monster. He's totally crushing everything. I'm not sure how Jimmy coming in is going to affect his usage. I know it will, obviously, because Jimmy demands usage, so it'll be kind of interesting to see. I don't know how Jimmy's going to bode in the offense. I don't know how he will play in his first game. I'm not going to play Jimmy tonight, even though he's 8.2K. That means he's got to, exceed 40 fantasy points to hit value. I'm going to stick with Embiid, and I'm going to say that he's still going to run the team. Obviously you got Simmons in there as well. So how they evenly distribute the usage is going to be pretty damn good. Pretty interesting to see. So this one's going to be kind of one to watch, like I said. But I think I will have some Embiid here. I think this is obviously a great matchup for him. Orlando, not as good against the center spot with Vooch down there. It's okay, but definitely will have some Embiid. JJ Redick at 5'3", put up 31 or more, or he's had 31 minutes or more in his last 3, put up 32 fantasy points last game. Obviously, that will be affected by Jimmy coming in as well. But, again, I think he's just right there at that point where he's going to get minutes. He's going to still see probably 28 or so minutes, even at the 2 guard. I don't know if Fultz just hasn't been doing anything. So Redick will definitely still see minutes. So at 5'3", I definitely still see some value. For the cheapie, you go Muscala at 3.5, 26 and 27, 28 minutes in his last 3. 26 fantasy points in his last game. They wanted to play him over Saric. They had no problem shipping Saric off. So with that being said, Muscala at 3.5, I think he's definitely a decent value play here against Orlando. So that's really what's going to wrap up the Philadelphia and Orlando game. Let's go right along to Cleveland at Washington. Cleveland here on a back-to-back, total of 220. Washington comes in as a -12 home favorite here, which is pretty crazy, being a 12-point favorite over the Cavs, who almost boat raced somebody last night. But, of course, they're probably going to feel a sense of letdown for Cleveland, is usually because we know that they've only won 2 games. So, anyway, Wall's price has gone up. It's 9-1 now, but at the same essence, he's put up 49 and 51 in his last 2 home games. So, again, Wall, obviously, if you feel like playing Wall, sure. Brad Beal continues to keep his price right around that 7K mark. It's 7.5 tonight. 43 or more fantasy points in his last 2 home games, so don't hate Brad Beal at all. I think if you want to look at Markieff Morris at 4.6, he played 39 minutes, put up 30 fantasy points in their last game. I think he's priced very, very cheap for starter minutes. Also, Jeff Green had a really nice game last game. I don't know if it was the narrative against Orlando. It very well could have been, but he's also put up 34 or 35 fantasy points in his last 2 games, and he is 4.2K. They've obviously given him minutes there. That's the only kicker with Dwight Howard. It seems like they love to run small. Here, Cleveland has kind of made it where they have to run kind of big with Tristan Thompson. They're cementing him back into the starting lineup. He's getting well over 30 minutes a game. Had a monster game last night. He broke his record of rebounds, had 22 or 23 rebounds last night. So, Tristan Thompson at 5.8, I don't hate it at all. Once again, he's playing, he should see at least 27 or 28 minutes. I'd probably say tonight, even on a back-to-back at 5.6 or 5.8K, 44 more fantasy points in his last 3 or 4. He's been balling. So, wouldn't overlook Tristan Thompson. Jordan Clarkson at 5.6. The guy's played 34. He's had 28, 25, and 33 minutes in his last 3. Put up 34 more fantasy points in 2 of those 3 games. George Hill continues to be out. Colin Sexton's running. He's getting plenty of run. Jordan Clarkson's getting plenty of run. That's basically the 1-2 punch there at the point guard spot and the 2 guard spot. They're rotating in and out with Rod Hood, and so that one's kind of also David Nwaba last night was a punt that I put into the SD Slack chat. If you were in it, you probably got on that one. He had 27 minutes and 32.2 fantasy points, and he's 3.2K again tonight. They do still have a slew of injuries. C.D. Osman's still out. George Hill, as mentioned. J.R. Smith came back last night. He played almost 40 minutes last night. He put up like 20, or I think he put up almost 30 fantasy points last night as well. Not as on JR tonight with him playing as many minutes, but I do like Nwaba here because he only, like I said, 27 minutes last night, so he should probably see around that kind of minutes again, hopefully, if all the injuries do stay the way they are. So at 3.2K, obviously a very nice GBP punt there if you want to play in tournaments. I don't hate that at all. So that's where I'm at in Cleveland and Washington. Let's go to Chicago at Boston. Not a huge favorite of this game at all. We got Boston here as a minus 12 home favorite, 210 on the total. This is one of the lower totals on the board. I'm just going to keep it simple here, guys. Levine, Wendell Carter Jr., Kyrie Irving. Really like Kyrie in this spot, obviously. At 8K, I think Kyrie is an excellent play as long as I think Chicago can't. That's the kicker. Do you think Chicago can stay in the game? That's the main kicker here for this game. But Irving at 8K is absolutely a great play. Jaylen Brown at 4.4. We know that the shooting guards have been just absolutely torching Chicago lately. Klay Thompson had a record for threes. So Jaylen Brown at 4.4, I think that's a great tournament play. Tatum at 6.6. He's had over 41 fantasy points in his last 2 games. He's coming around. It seems like he's on a spurt. So might be one of those where you kind of got to catch the heater with him. So Tatum, I don't hate at 6.6, and that's really all that I care about in Chicago and Boston. So let's keep it rolling. Miami at Brooklyn. Miami minus 218 on the total. I honestly think this game has a lot of stackability. Obviously, we know the Nets like to run with pace, so obviously that means Miami's going to have to play an upper tempo game. That makes me like Dragic quite a bit at 6.3, 38.8, 39.8 fantasy points in his last 2 of 3. He put up, he sandwiched that with a 21-minute, 7.3 fantasy point performance game in between those 2 games. So I'm not worried about that game. He just had a terrible game. Also, like I said, this is going to be. We know that DAR doesn't play the greatest of defenses. He's just more worried about scoring, which I do obviously like DAR tonight at 6.7, 40-plus fantasy points in his last 2 of 3. I love some D'Angelo Russell. Love Dragic. I think Whiteside at 8.4. He has not really performed well on the road, but I think he's going to get well overlooked because of that. Not a huge fan of his price at 8.4. I'd probably rather play him at like 7.5 or 7.8. But at 8.4, I still think there's a slight amount of value on him there. Of course, we know Brooklyn is not very good. Looks like Jarrett Allen might be back tonight. He was just he missed with an illness last game. RHJ got the start. So, Whiteside, sure. Tournament plays, obviously, yeah. Another good tournament play is Wayne Ellington at 3.9, 24-plus minutes in his last 4 games, over 21 fantasy points in 3 of those 4 games. Wayne Ellington, we know, has the 30-point upside, 30 FP fantasy point upside. So, Wayne Ellington at 3.9K. We know that, there's still Dwayne Wade's still out. So Wayne Ellington should continue to see minutes. He's seeing plenty. He's seeing decent minutes, 24 minutes, like I said, or more in his last 4. So Wayne Ellington thinks great play. For Brooklyn, DAR, as I mentioned, I think you could look at Joe Harris at 4.7. He's played 34 minutes in his last game. He continues to see plenty of minutes. There was, Karis LeVert went down for injury. Looks like he won't be back until, the end of the season or so. So that opens up some more of that 2-guard spot and some of the point guard spot whenever he runs, point a little bit every once in a while. So definitely like Joe Harris at 4.7. I also think, RHJ at 5.2. We need to check on Jarrett Allen's status. But Jarrett Allen even at 5.1, I don't know if I'll play him because of, he's being sickness. He might have the poos or whatever he's got. He might have to go to the bathroom a couple times during the game. So I might just hold off on Jarrett Allen. But RHJ at 5.2 played 27 minutes, put up 37 fantasy points last game. RHJ was one of my main targets last year. He's always underpriced and he's never owned. So RHJ, once again, got to look at. So that's really where I'm at in Miami and Brooklyn. Going to move right along to Detroit and Toronto. This is another game that it has a decent size total. And honestly, at the time right now, it has the highest total on the board for the ones that have a line. Pelicans, Minnesota doesn't have a line. Knicks, OKC, no line. Portland and LA has a line. Let's see here. Yeah, I guess there's only two games that don't have a line. Anyway, 223 on the total. Toronto minus 10 at home. This game does not bode well for Detroit at all. Toronto has been very good defensively, and so far they've been very good down low. This game does not bode well for Drummond nor Blake. If I had to pick one, I'm going to have to go Drummond at 9.3, just because I think that he still will feast his, regular. He'll still get his down low. Blake, I just see this being a lot tougher matchup for him with Siakam down there, and Ibaka. It's not good. It's not a good matchup. So. Anyway, Kawhi at 8.6, sure. Lowry at 8.1. I really like Lowry in this spot. I think Lowry is a great play tonight at 8.1. Again, Ibaka at 6.2. You can even look at maybe a cheap Danny Green at 4K flat. Like I said, Detroit, Drummond at 9.3. I think you can maybe look at a cheap Reggie Bullock at 4.1, hopefully in a tournament, and obviously another play in the tournament if you feel like getting froggy. Langston Galloway at 3.9. Again, I'm not crazy about this game. That's really about all that I see that I could halfway like. So, going to move on. Memphis at Milwaukee, 216 on the total, minus 9.5 for the Bucks at home. This game should also obviously be another up-tempo game for Memphis. I really like Marc Gasol at 7.1. This kind of bodes well for him. At 7.1, I think he's a great tournament play, obviously. He's probably one of my favorite centers tonight. So, Marc Gasol, I definitely will be on. Jaren Jackson at 5.6 is still too cheap for his starter minutes. 40 fantasy points in his last 2 of 3 games, 35-plus minutes. 35 or more fantasy points in his last 3 or 4. He's playing well, over 27, 28 minutes. He is the starting power forward. He will be matched up against Giannis. He's been holding his own though. So really, that's really all that I care for Memphis. Gasol, Jaren Jackson. I think if you want to maybe look at a cheap Kyle Anderson, he's never owned, and he's actually had 2 really good games last 2 back to back. If you want to look at Milwaukee, you can look at Brook Lopez. This kind of stretches him out a little bit, stretches Gasol out. He's 5K. He's put up 41 and 44 in his last 2. He's been shooting a gazillion 3-pointers. Obviously, we know that's tons of value for a center to have 3-pointers in their repertoire, but obviously we know Brook Lopez only shoots 3-pointers, so it's kind of hard. It's kind of a double-edged sword. It's like you want to play him because he has tons of upside with the 3-pointers, but then again, like, he doesn't do a whole ton more. It's not like he's crashing the boards completely, entirely. And so anyways, at 5K, great tournament play as well. The only other guys that I really like from Milwaukee are Bledsoe at 6.3. Never really loved to fade Conley, but I just don't like the spot for him tonight, and I'd rather have Bledsoe in this spot at 6.3. I think the price favors Bledsoe a little bit more, and he's at home. I think, honestly, other than Giannis, I think he's going to be the one that gets the most usage out of, him, Middleton, and Giannis. So I like Bledsoe. We'll have him in some tournament play. Malcolm Brogdon at 5.2. He's put up 30 more fantasy points in his last 3. So Malcolm Brogdon, if you look at kind of some of the game logs that Memphis has played in here lately, the shooting guard has been giving him quite a bit of run. So usually Garrett Temple is a pretty damn good defender, but obviously he slacked off a little bit. It could be a totally different game tonight. Obviously we know how that goes in the association. But either way, I think Brogdon at 5.2 is a nice look as well. That's where I'm at in Memphis and Milwaukee. Let's move on to probably your chalk game of the night, and that's going to be Pelicans at Minnesota. There's no line. Obviously, we know Jimmy Butler is gone. We know that Saric and Covington are in. Do I know how that rotation is going to go? Absolutely not. Do I know who is going to start? Absolutely not. I do know that they have said that Taj Gibson has said that he does not care to come off the bench. So is Saric going to start, or is Gibson? I'm kind of waiting to see. I would rather wait on this game and see. Obviously, I know I'm going to like Derrick Rose, and I know I'm going to like Towns. Those guys are going to continue. Jeff Teague and Wiggins are both questionable once again. Teague came back, played almost 40 minutes, and now he's questionable for that knee, I guess. If he does not play, I absolutely will be on Derrick Rose at 7.2K. His price went down $300. If Teague doesn't play, I'm all over Derrick Rose again. Towns at 9.5. Not my favorite play, down there against Brow, but it should be scrappy. This game should have a high total. We know Tibbs is going to play them, run them to death. So Towns at 9.5. I don't hate it one bit. Obviously, AD at 11.3. He put up 72, 59, and 63 in his last 3 games. Probably my favorite play for the Pelicans is Drew Holiday at 8.5. I feel like his price should be closer to 10K. The guy's just been monstering 41 plus fantasy points in his last 8 games. 4 of those games over 48 fantasy points. Drew Holiday is worth playing, guys. Absolutely. Cash, GPP, everything. Drew Holiday's worth playing. Obviously, we're going to be looking at Nico again to see if he's playing or not. Julius Randle will definitely come into play if he does not play again, and I don't think he's looking like he might play. So I will definitely play in Randle in this spot, obviously, especially if Sarge starts. I just don't think Sarge is all that great at defense. He gets in foul trouble early, and then he backs off. So Randle could have a really good game at 6.9 if there is no Nico. So that's one to watch. Watch Wiggins, watch Teague's status. Again, if both of those guys don't play, Josh Okogie once again can be a really nice play off the. He might even get a start at the 2 guard, or Rose and Tyus Jones. Tyus Jones obviously would be a really good play again. Elfrid Payton is still questionable. But if Drew Holiday starts at the point guard, I will not be playing any Tyus Jones. Drew Holiday has locked down some really good point guards lately. While Elfrid has been out. Either way, that's one to watch. Just monitor all the statuses on that game. It's going to be one that you want to have some exposure to, obviously. New York Knicks at OKC. This game does not have a line either. Russ is not slated to play, so once again, load up Schroeder. Put up 43 or 40. I think he put up over 43 or 44 fantasy points in their last game, 7.8K. And Frankie, whatever, however you say it, Tilikina, however you want to say his last fucking name. He got benched in the second half last game for the Knicks. He's, I guess Fizdale wanted to see if throwing him in the fire at the point guard would get him going. Obviously, it did not. I think Trey Burke started the second half. Either him or Moutier. Obviously, Moutier at 3.7 I think is a great play. He's been seeing more of the minutes, I believe, so Moutier at 3.7 is going to be one that I'm going to be looking at. Mario Hezonja at 3.8 has played 22 or more minutes in his last 4 or 5 games. He's obviously a decent punt. He's been getting the minutes. We know he has the upside. I definitely like some Hezonja at 3.8 tonight in tournaments. Alonzo Trier at 4.5, 22 plus minutes in 7 of his last 8 games. Like I said, Frankie's not been getting it done. he's been playing really well off the bench. So at 4.5K, I don't hate that as a nice punt play. Kevin Knox is back in the fold, 3.9. Played 26 and 24 minutes in his last 2 games. He's scored double digits in both. Just hasn't really done much else. But he's got a scoring down. So if he can just pick up 5, 6, 7, 8 boards, he would be real close to double time. And at 3.9, getting 26, 24 minutes, he definitely has the potential to put up doubles. It's not probably the greatest matchup with OKC with Jeremy Grant and Adams down there. However, in tournaments, I like some Kevin Knox. If you want to punt that at 3.9, I think that's a great look. For OKC, like I said, PG at 9.6 and Schroeder at 7.8. You can look at Adams if you want. New York Knicks have actually been pretty damn good against the center spot with Mitchell and Cantor coming in off the bench playing 24, 26 minutes. I can't play Cantor at 6.7K. He's still putting up 35 fantasy points tonight, but I want the upside. You got to have the upside. You just can't have the upside with that. So either way, we know he can do it, but I mean, you want Cantor to, and really, I say that Cantor really has never been a 30-minute, 35-minute, center, but he could be. And I think he could put up 45 fantasy point games if he was to be able to play 30 minutes on average. But, I don't hate it, I guess, if you want to throw a tournament dart. Like I said, he does have 40-point upside, even at 26 minutes, I think. But there's some games that he plays 20 minutes, 22 minutes. You can't play that and be comfortable. So that's what I'm looking at in New York and OKC. Going to move along to Utah at Dallas. I like Doncic at 6.9, 42, 37, 39 fantasy points in his last 3 games. Obviously, Doncic is a good look. Berea at 4.3. We don't know. Wes Matthews looks like he's going to play. If he does play, I might back off a little bit of Berea. But if he does not play, which to me what the reports are saying, it looks like he's going to play. I think Wes Matthews would be a decent look in tournaments. Berea at 4.3 if he does not play. Harrison Barnes, no, probably not going to go there. DeAndre, probably not going to go there because I like Rudy. I like Gobert quite a bit at 8.1, 44 plus fantasy points in his last 3, well over 30 minutes every game. We'll be playing Rudy at 8.1. He's probably right behind Gasol as one of my favorite centers tonight. The white chocolate Joe Ingles at 6.1, 36, 50 in his last 2 games, 36 and 50 fantasy points in his last 2 games. 6.1 is total. His price has come down substantially. He had a couple dud games. Well, actually, had 4 or 5 dud games, and now he's picking it back up. So I probably won't try to catch him on that. Favors at 4.6 has been playing well. 30-plus fantasy points in his last 3 or 4, playing 24 to 26 minutes. Derek Favors at 4.6. I really like that. Definitely in tournaments. San Antonio at Phoenix. 4.5 total. 4.5 point road favorite here for the Spurs. 2-11 on the total. I like Warren Booker, Ayton, maybe Mikal Bridges at 3.7 if you feel like there's going to be garbage time. He's been playing very well in garbage time. Got 26 minutes in their last game because of garbage time. Put up 27 fantasy points, I believe. Or played 21 minutes, put up 26 or 27 fantasy points. Either way, Bridges at 3.7. It's probably worth the dart. Obviously, for San Antonio, DeRozan at 9K is really pricey. Derek White at 4.7. He put up 21 or 22 fantasy points. That's right around his price. Actually went up quite a bit. LaMarcus Aldridge has come alive here lately, putting up 40-plus fantasy points, I think, in his last 2. So at 8.3, I do not hate LaMarcus Aldridge. I think Rudy Gay is out again, so Bertans at 3.6 is a nice dart to look at. I would definitely be looking at Bertans again. So, yeah, Warren Booker, Ayton. I would look at White, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Bertans, maybe Bridges if you think it could get out of hand. Here's the game you want to stack, fellas and ladies. It's Portland and L.A. Get Dame right now as a game-time decision. If he does not play, I will be all over McCollum at 6.6. If Dame does play, I will be looking at him at 8.8. I'd hate that. I don't hate that at all. LBJ is 10.3. 10.3K tonight, guys. I don't know if they're just wanting you to play him over AD and Giannis, but, I'm going to be a fish, and I'm going to take LBJ at 10.3 all day. That's the cheapest you're going to see him. So LBJ at 10.3, absolutely. Lonzo at 5.4. He's put up 36, 23, and 34 fantasy points for the last 3 at home. I think Josh Hart is a nice tournament dart at 4.2. I think you could You could look at Kuzma at 6.7 or so. I'm not a huge fan of his price, but he is getting the minutes, getting well over 30. So that's really kind of where I'm looking at for Lakers. Other than, watching Dame's status and playing McCollum, I would still play Dame and just late swap, obviously. At 8.8, I think he's a fabulous price for this. It's, 226 total. It's one of the higher totals on the board. It's higher than Detroit and Toronto, which is the next highest for a line that we have on the board right now. But other than those guys, I liked Evan Turner at 4.4. Obviously, if there's no Dame, I would be looking at Seth Curry at 3.1. He could probably see an uptick in minutes. This would be a nice game for him, obviously. So at 3.1, if no Dame, definitely looking at Seth Curry. That will wrap it up. It's been 25 minutes. It was an 11-game slate. I liked quite a bit in it. I enjoyed this one. Hope you guys did as well. Enjoy your Wednesday.